Our recent escape to the Bahamas was meant to be a bomb-an antidote to the weight of 15 years, filled with career demands, sleepless nights with children, and the quiet erosion of routine. But instead, it revealed the gaping wound I had tried so hard to ignore. Emily, my wife, had changed. In the weeks before our trip, I noticed it. The spark that once danced in her eyes whenever she planned our vacations was gone. She didn't obsess over packing lists or spend hours debating swimwear. She didn't fuss over sunscreen brands or research island excursions. Instead, she moved through the days distracted, tethered to her phone as if it contained some secret world more important than our own. Her replies were clipped, her tone distant. I convinced myself it was just stress that life had simply worn her thin. But when we arrived in paradise, the illusion shattered. The Bahamas welcomed us with warm winds and waters that glittered like melted sapphires. But even amidst such beauty, Emily remained detached. I would point out a coral reef glowing beneath the surface or suggest a sunset walk along the shore, and she would nod absently, her eyes still fixed on her screen. Her touch, once instinctive and full of affection, had become perfunctory. Her laugh, a sound that once made the world brighter, now felt strained and foreign. I tried. I tried. Candlelit dinners by the beach, slow walks hand in hand through the sand, soft conversations under moonlight. But each moment fell flat, bouncing off the emotional wall she'd built between us. Something inside her was unreachable, and I was beginning to understand why. The doubt didn't strike like lightning. It crept in like a tide, quiet, persistent, and by the time we packed to leave, it had already taken root. I watched her throw clothes into her suitcase without her usual precision, shirts crumpled, shoes tossed in carelessly, but then I noticed a small, worn leather pouch nestled between the chaos. She handled it differently, gently, carefully, almost reverently. She kept it close as we zipped the bags and caught our flight home. The return journey was quiet. Emily stared out the airplane window, her face unreadable, lost somewhere behind the clouds, and I sat beside her, the ache in my chest growing heavier with every mile that brought us closer to home, and further from the people we used to be. That night, we returned to our house where the children slept soundly, untouched by the storm that was silently gathering. We climbed into bed without a word, to strangers under one roof. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my mind spiraling with suspicion, grief, and a deepening sense of betrayal. The next morning, Emily left early, citing work. I stayed behind, restless, and wandered into the guest room, untouched since our return. Her suitcase still sat there. I moved it to make room and noticed a small tear in its lining, nearly invisible, hidden beneath a layer of neatly folded clothes. My pulse quickened. With trembling fingers, I reached inside and felt something soft. I pulled it out, a silk scarf, emerald green with intricate embroidery, not Emily's style at all. It smelled faintly of a rich, unfamiliar perfume, bold and elegant. My breath caught when I spotted a single initial stitched into one corner. J. I dug deeper. My hands unearthed more, a miniature bottle of that same perfume, a sleek black receipt from an upscale jewelry boutique, and finally, a photograph. A candid shot of Emily standing beside a dark-haired man, both smiling, to brightly, to intimately. She looked alive in that picture in a way I hadn't seen in years. The man, confident and smug, had an unsettling familiarity. I stared at his face, memorizing every detail as the truth crashed into me. Emily was having an affair. 15 years. Gone in a blink. Every shared secret, every sacrifice, every whispered promise, all rendered meaningless. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. My heart crushed under the weight of something I didn't want to believe. I sat alone in that room, clutching a stranger's scarf, trying to reconcile the woman in that photo with the one I thought I knew. The days that followed were a blur. I wore a mask of normalcy for our children, forcing smiles I didn't feel, carrying on conversations I couldn't process. But at night, I sat in silence, staring at the evidence, the scarf, the perfume, the photograph. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The betrayal played on loop in my mind, each detail cutting deeper than the last. A week later, Emily came home late. She smelled faintly of that same perfume. I was waiting in the living room, photograph in hand, my heart calm but hard. She froze in the doorway, reading everything on my face. "Emily," I said quietly, "we need to talk." Her composure faltered. She walked slowly into the room, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of consequence. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I laid each piece of evidence before her, methodically, without emotion. The scarf, the photo, the perfume, the receipt. With every item, I watched her unravel. At first, she denied it, her voice cracking, her excuses shallow and shifting. But the truth was already written on her face. There was no hiding it. It was nothing. She whispered, "Just a co-worker, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything." The words echoed in my skull, hollow and infuriating. I stood then, and everything I'd held back surged forward, not as shouting but as a quiet, seething fury. I reminded her of our years together, of the family we built, of the loyalty I had given without question. I asked her how she could destroy it all for lies wrapped in silk and perfume. Her tears came hot and heavy, but they did nothing to move me. She begged. She apologized. But I was already gone. That the divorce came swiftly. She lost the house, the car, most of her savings. Her affair became public knowledge, whispered through our social circle like poison in water. The man Jay was married, wealthy, and had no intention of giving up his comfortable life. He left Emily behind, discarded, a casualty of his selfish indulgence. I didn't feel satisfaction in her downfall. What I felt was clarity. I focused on our children. I became their anchor, their constant. They struggled at first, confused, hurt, but I surrounded them with love, consistency, and the kind of honesty they deserved. The road was hard, lonely, but with time, the wounds began to scab. The house no longer echoed with absence. It felt like mine. I still keep the emerald scarf in a drawer, not as a token of pain, but as a symbol of endurance. It reminds me of who I was before everything fell apart and who I became after. Stronger, wiser, unafraid to begin again. And I did.